Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review. This show is being recorded on July 4th, 2023. I'm Asbed Bedrossian and I'm here with Hovik Manucharyan, and here are the major topics we'll touch on today. The Armenian-Azerbaijani negotiations continue. Foreign Ministers Mirzoyan and Bayramov held 3 days of discussions in Washington, D.C., with little to show for it. They also discussed the rights and security of Artsakh people, which remains a major issue of contention, as Stepanakert continues its journey towards self-determination instead of dissolving and disappearing into Azerbaijan. Differences about how to conduct border demarcations also remain a sticking issue, and so the rest of the issues were reportedly not even discussed. Finally, we want to remind you that Armenian Citizens Ballot Initiative Hayaqve is still out there. So if you're eligible to vote in Armenia, please go and sign this initiative. To talk about these issues, we have with us Arthur Martirosyan, who is a senior consultant with CM Partners. In 1994, after graduating from Yale University, he joined Conflict Management Group and Harvard Negotiations Project and has since worked on conflicts in the former Soviet Union, the Middle East, the Balkans, Africa, and Latin America. Hello and welcome, Arthur. Glad to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me. Good to be with you on this 247th Independence Day.
Yes, today is July 4th here in America, Independence Day. We just talked a little bit before the show, and I want to mention that just in the last couple of days, you have been named as one of the who's who in America, recognized for your 30 years, 3 decades of work.
Yes.
Can you tell us just a little bit about this recognition, please?
Well, it came
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, it came as a surprise to me. I didn't expect anything like that. But I mean, I don't even know how they figured out that I exist and decided to include me. That's
who are they? Who is it that makes this decision?
That's a publication that is Who is Who in America. That's the Marquis Who's Who publication board. And before LinkedIn, I guess that was a major way for Americans and foreigners to find out who is who in various fields in the United States. So you'd open this thick book, Who's Who in America, find the name, and get their bios and understand who's who in America. In fact, before I came to the United States, a gentleman who gave me one of the recommendations for a university application in 91, he was in Who's Who in America. And I was so impressed by that fact. And I never thought that I would end up. And after 30 years in the US, yes, I got to Who's Who in America. I don't know what it means really in real terms. And, am I proud of that? In some ways, maybe, but not really. I would easily exchange this for some small achievement in Armenia and Artsakh these days.
Well, I'm certainly proud of it. I've known you since the early 90s myself, through thick and thin times of this crisis. And I think of you as one of the thought leaders, and I'm proud that we're able to talk with you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, been a long time.
Today is the 205th day of the blockade in Artsakh. Just to set the context and bring us back to our podcast. And I think that we should begin by essentially the main topic this week has been and will be Artsakh, specifically the negotiations that continue in Washington, D.C. and, go from capital to capital. So in the past month, Azerbaijan has fired on Armenian and Artsakh border positions and villages almost daily. And in the past couple of weeks, they installed concrete barriers on the so-called Lachin checkpoint. Essentially all communication is blocked between the two Armenian states. Azerbaijan's shooting killed 4 servicemen in Artsakh a week ago. As usual, Russia and the West made some toothless statements and urged Azerbaijan to reopen the corridor. And as usual, Azerbaijan simply ignored them. Authorities in Artsakh which is something new that I've heard, urged Armenia to simply stop negotiations with Azerbaijan as long as Baku keeps resorting to violence. So despite all this, the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan were again in Washington, D.C. this week, and the talks were mediated in the State Department by Secretary of State Antony Blinken. At the end of the negotiation session, Blinken announced, quote, some progress, unquote, around several more articles of a document that will be called, ironically, Peace and Normalization of Relations. Before we dive into the main topics, from a negotiations theory perspective, Arthur, would it be a good idea for Armenia to heed the call of Artsakh authorities and stop negotiations, saying, we won't negotiate under duress, and what would that bring us? Because that's been quite rationalized in Armenian press as well recently.
Right. Well, there is, in theory, this question that is important for any negotiator: when to negotiate and when not to negotiate, and even a more difficult question, whether you should negotiate with the devil or not. I mean, that's a well-known text by Bob Nukin from Program on Negotiation, Harvard Law School, where he tries to give at least some theoretical arguments to when you negotiate and when you don't negotiate. Very simply put, you need to find answers to 4 issues. The most important one is what's going to happen if we don't negotiate. What are our alternatives? Do we have an alternatives? In other words, can we satisfy our national interests other ways without getting to the table of negotiations? What are our national interests that we think at the table of negotiation we might be able, even under other situation with the devil, advance? What is the cost of negotiating, right? If you are negotiating with them under such conditions, when they are talking to you from the position of force, and the mediator is willingly condoning that behavior, what are the implications and what is the cost of doing it that way? And then finally, there is this issue of, if I accept negotiations on their terms, what does it mean for my future negotiations? And what does it mean what they understand about how to negotiate with me? In other words, if I'm accepting someone's negotiating with me from position of force, I'm sending them a message that that's the right way of doing it with me, right? So if I were to follow Mnuchin and I were to answer all these questions, I certainly would sign or align with the opinion of the Karabakh Artsakh authorities. You cannot be doing that unless you think that your national interests somehow are being advanced by what they are doing. And here we get to the most problematic issue. And that is the Armenian authorities understand national interests differently from most of Armenians. That's how I think, because, if you look at the surveys and most recent ones, they all show that the vast majority of Armenians are opposed to what they're doing. Essentially, both on Artsakh and on Turkey fronts, you have an internal opposition. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be, it's going to stop them from doing that. They do that because it serves their group interests. It helps them to stay in power, because if they're doing what's in the interest of other players, in this case, United States and maybe others, but they can sell it to us that it's in our interests. That's our national interest, because it leads to peace and whatnot. They're getting what they want out of this process. But does it really serve our national interests? Is it in our national interest to see Artsakh as part of authoritarian and corrupt sultanistic regime of Azerbaijan? Can it guarantee any rights to Armenians when it cannot provide the rights of Azerbaijanis themselves? That's nonsense. But that nonsense is repeated on the Armenian public television when the U.S. ambassador is interviewed, and the interviewer sends her softballs. But even in answering to those softball questions, she contradicts herself. She says that democracy is so important and Armenia is making so much progress in democracy. They are strong support of the democracy. And yet, in the beginning, she says that Artsakh, part of Azerbaijan, they can guarantee the rights of all people living in Karabakh. She's not saying Armenia. She's saying all people living in Karabakh. How can you guarantee that? How can you guarantee that if you cannot guarantee that one of the parties stick to the international law, and that law now mandates that they lift the blockade? There is a verdict of the International Court of Law, and if you are the major player internationally, and if you really stand by those values, how can your actions be in such contradiction with your declarations? Right? And I'm saddened that I have to say this on July 4th, but the truth is more important than friendship, right? With Plato. Okay, so yes, this is, and when this happens, you can get angry about it, but you should be asking yourself, why is this happening? What are the U.S. national interests? Why do they want it that way? And I think there are answers to that. It's just that it's no consolation to people who, for over 200 days now, are living under blockade. Let me give you a short answer. Yes, I support Artsakh government's position that Armenia should pull out of the negotiations, but not say they are never going to negotiate. No, you have to say that we're not going to negotiate until one of the parties is using threat, using power to achieve its goals, and we're not going to negotiate until international norm is so flagrantly violated. Are we asking for the moon? No. Isn't it fair, what I'm saying? Of course it is. It really meets the one very simple principle. That is, I'm asking only what I'm entitled to by international norms. I'm not asking for more.
Right.
That interview, which for our listeners, by the way, was yesterday with Petros Vazarian on Armenian Public TV. Azerbaijan's provocations, as you have stated, Arthur, are essentially terroristic in nature. We've always heard that you don't negotiate with terrorists, but they are essentially geared to spread fear and support its diplomacy, of course, in the negotiations with Armenia. Is there any chance for progress, let alone success, in this current climate? And how would you define success in these dire times?
Well, the way I would define success is very simple. When the other side does what I want, or having the other side have it our way. I mean, and it's not like, I mean, it violates its rights or violates its stance, reputation, if they just comply with the international norms. So success would be that, at least in my understanding. But apparently success is differently defined, again, by the Armenian government that sends its negotiator to negotiate under such conditions. They probably see the prize very differently from me. How they see it, where have they made progress, where are the obstacles? We don't know any of that. We don't know any of that. We can certainly understand that there are issues, and at least three have been mentioned where progress hasn't been made. What are the issues where they've made progress, and what progress we don't know? And it's not like, I mean, as a professional negotiator, I do not insist that there should be full disclosure and transparency, things that Pashinyan was promising in 2018, right? It's going to be, I mean, it was nonsense when he was making those promises then. I understand that. But a statement about progress without saying where that progress is similarly vapid. Yeah, I mean, what is the progress? Where?
Right.
Is that your subjective, or you can make a press release after any negotiation saying that some progress has been made?
Or maybe it's code for no progress.
Yes, they sat down and ate dinner together. Progress.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, they even toasted to each other's health. Or a lot of progress. I mean, you tell me how you define it. I mean, I don't understand where the progress is.
Let's ignore Armenian government's definition of progress. I want to go to what former Foreign Minister Vartan Oskanian said today. He said that if only Pashinyan would leave diplomacy to experts and give him and a qualified team 3 months and not say anything, not talk, not even say a peep, that would be enough to achieve a significantly positive outcome. Now, and he said that in order to do this, the logic and narrative of the negotiations must change. I know it's very difficult, and I don't want you to second guess what Vartan Oskanian was trying to say. But what would you, if you were, suddenly put in front of the Azerbaijani negotiation team and given this role to negotiate on behalf of Armenia, and Pashinyan, let's say he doesn't resign, let's say he doesn't fall under the bus, or whatever, but let's say that he's still there, but he agrees to give a team enough mandate to do this. What would be, some of your initial goals, like for the first 3 months in the negotiations?
And what does it mean to change the logic and narrative of a negotiation?
Well, these are questions to Vartan Oskanian. Certainly, I cannot speak for him, not that I've heard about his statements, nor do I understand what he aspires to achieve in 3 months. But he is an experienced diplomat, probably one of the most experienced Armenian diplomats. So he probably should be interviewed by you guys. If you're asking me, I tell you that negotiations is not always what happens at the table of negotiations. Sometimes before you get to the table, you need to do negotiations away from the table. You have to do negotiations and have a right strategy of talking to various players so that you create the right influence on the other party before even they get to the table. Number one. Number two, I certainly would not negotiate when the other side uses force or threatens to use force. That's not right. We don't want to send the wrong message to them, saying that, yes, this is the language that is acceptable for us. It is unacceptable, and I will build alliances in support of that position of Azerbaijan being unacceptable, right? Secretary Blinken, you want the laurels of Camp David or of some sort of top mediator? Fine. You have enough instruments, foreign policy instruments, to achieve the goal of lifting the blockade demanded by the UN International Court, and you have enough instruments to bring Azerbaijan to senses. That is, if you want me to continue to accept your mediation services. I'm not saying that you should act as an arbiter here, because arbitration is different from mediation. You are a mediator. I understand the constraints mediators have, but even as a fair mediator, because I'm not asking for something that is, beyond the norms or international norms or law, you should be able to make it clear to both parties, by the way, that these are the norms and principles. If you want me to mediate, these are the norms and principles that you need to adhere to. Don't ask for more.
And everyone has already signed off on the non-use of force. It's just not being observed by one party.
Well, I mean, obviously, yes. If we go to the OSCE, Decalogue, the Helsinki Accords, of course, I mean, it's all written there. If we go to UN Charter, it's there. But that's what I'm saying. It's and when a country ratifies a convention or accepts a membership, it says that I accept those rules. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm not asking them to do something that goes beyond normal rules. I'm asking the mediator here, in this case, Secretary Blinken and his team, why are they tolerating this kind of behavior that defies international law and, in fact, even undermines their position as a major player? Why? Is it more important for them to keep the position of the mediator? Do they have other ulterior interests that we don't see? Why do they want to be in a process that is not fair? Obviously not fair. That's one, but it's more complex than that. If it were just the West and United States, we could probably stop there. But there is also Russia. And obviously, we understand that if Russians are watching this, they're saying, oh, excellent. Excellent. What Azeris did is excellent because it shows that the U.S. mediation is not fair. Is their mediation fair? Also a big question, because they, as a mediator, also have their national interests.
Their own interests, right?
Of course. And we can see, I mean, we cannot find a fair arbiter because the world order is in such, shameful condition that you cannot find a fair third party that would come and say, here is what the solution should be. Stick to this solution. Something that the United States did in Kosovo, right?
Yeah.
They didn't ask Serbia if they agree with the independence of Kosovo or not. They didn't say that Kosovo should continue to stay as part of Serbia or Yugoslavia. No. Were they driven then by the values, as they were saying? Yes and no. It's just that the values, the declaration of values, coincided with their interests. And in this case, their interests do not coincide with their values. And when that happens, values are discarded. Or we are made believe, they want us to believe that all they do is for those values of peace, democracy. And they continue to tell us that democracy is going to solve our security dilemma. Why it hasn't?
Right. Arthur, there are reportedly 4 major agenda items, which are current disagreements. Rights and security of Artsakh people is 1. The border demarcation details, maps, whatever, that's number 2. Unblocking of communications and transportations remain there. Some disagreements remain there. And who will guarantee that the sides will stick to the deal, apparently. So let's dive a little deeper into the rights and security talk, which the Pashinyan regime has put its hopes on. Empirically, the Soviet years have shown to us that any existence of Armenians that is subordinate to Baku, no matter how autonomous, has been destructive and ended up in ethnic cleansing of Armenians. We can point to Nakhichevan, which was depopulated of its indigenous Armenian residents during the Soviet regime, and Artsakh itself, which went from over 90% demographic Armenians in the 1920s to under 74% in 1988, which is when the struggle for self-determination and independence began. Now, the leadership of Azerbaijan, which has undergone 30 years of government-sponsored anti-Armenian hate indoctrination, has explicitly rejected, we've put the link in the show notes, the idea of providing rights and security guarantees to the Armenians of Artsakh. When the Pashinyan regime officials repeat the phrase rights and security, what do you think they're envisioning? What are they talking about? Can such guarantees even be realized without international presence? Where does Azerbaijan's direct rejection of rights and security which is the main thesis of Pashinyan's so-called era of peace platform, Leave Armenia's Diplomacy?
Well, there is a whole range of things when we're talking about the rights of a minority, assuming that Pashinyan has already accepted that Artsakh Armenians are a minority within Azerbaijan, right? I mean, if he says that he recognizes the territorial integrity with Artsakh, that's what he's saying. So then there is a whole range of things that can be arranged to protect the rights, and it goes. Obviously, Aliyev's position is obvious: no political entity, not even cultural autonomy, nothing. And then you are just a citizen of different ethnicity, and you have the rights to language, to culture, religion, just like all other citizens of Azerbaijan. Do Lezgis speak Lezgi? Do they have Lezgi schools in Azerbaijan? Not that I know of. Russians do, but Russians have a very strong support of the of Russia on that, and that's one area where Azerbaijan is playing all these games in symbolically important Russian language in Azerbaijan. Oh, okay. See how many Russian schools we have here. But that's not what I guess he has in mind, Aliyev has in mind, when he says the rights are going to be protected. Now, what Pashinyan has in his mind, I don't know. Is he talking about some model that would be like Swedes in Finland? But Swedes are a very small minority in Finland, and yet Swedish is the second national language of Finland. Is Armenian going to be that? No, of course not. So we do not know. There is a whole range of things that is possible. But the most fundamental issue here is, even if they were to announce that they're giving us autonomy, even a political autonomy, as you rightly said, you have to trust that that's going to happen. But they're not promising you that. They're not. Even if they were, I mean, I still would have a lot of concerns about how it's going to be happening, and how Armenians who even in the last 30 years, if you go to the various democracy measuring ratings and whatnot, those who've been measuring, they've been showing at times even more democracy in Artsakh than in Armenia, sometimes. More democracy definitely in Artsakh than in Azerbaijan. There is no, I mean, you cannot even talk about democracy there. In Artsakh, we've had presidents change by elections. We have local kind of mayors elected, district governors kind of also elected. So how would you have an ethnic group that aspires to be organized politically in democratic terms be part of a sultanistic regime?
Impossible.
I don't know how that question is answered, by the way, by Blinken, Sullivan, or the ambassador was not asked even that question, or he asked, but he didn't follow on. I mean, and she didn't answer that question.
Well, their vision of a country is a republic, like America. I don't think they are envisioning a sultanistic country like Azerbaijan.
Well, I mean, in this republic, I mean, we have states where there is minority, Spanish-speaking minority, and even without any special legal arrangements or legislative arrangements. I mean, I go to my local bank or I go to my medical insurance, and they ask me if I want to stick to English or switch to Spanish.
Yeah.
Right?
Even voting information is available in multiple languages.
Well, but
government forms.
But again, Azerbaijan is not United States.
Absolutely.
And it cannot be United States. And I just picked Lezgis, but let's pick any other minority in Azerbaijan. And we'll see what fates awaits Armenians. Even worse, because they're at least nominally Muslim, and they can blend with the local population, right? Here, it's very different, especially given our previous history and the culture of revenge, right? When Pashinyan was celebrating, when Pashinyan was congratulating Erdogan on Kurban Bayram, I'm not against it. I mean, the neighbors, why not? Congratulate Iran, congratulate everyone. I mean, why not? Religion is not an issue for us. But on that same day, in social media of Azerbaijan, they were saying 4 Armenians were sacrificed on this Kurban Bayram. Now, this a state, a government that aspires at least to be inclusive for minorities doesn't tolerate that kind of stuff. Simply doesn't tolerate. And Azerbaijan has not shown any signs of subsiding even Armenophobia. So again, my question is to Mr. Blinken, would he, being Jewish himself, right, insist that Jews continue to live in Nazi Germany after 1933 or 1938 even after Kristallnacht, with the hindsight that he has now? Maybe there were some Jews even after Kristallnacht who were saying, oh, no, Hitler really is going to respect human rights here. After all, he was democratically elected. So, I mean, there are many questions, and I'm sure, I mean, these are rhetorical questions now.
But they're very strong points.
They're not going to have answers to these questions, nor they need to give any answers to the government in Armenia. Not that the government is asking. We saw how they frame the question as if he's asking very tough questions. Look, our opposition is saying this and this and that. Well, invite opposition and let the opposition ask her. Right? Don't talk on behalf of the opposition.
Right.
That's not what happens in the United States. And if ambassador wanted to hear the Armenian opposition, she'd go and talk to the Armenian opposition media.
Yes.
Hovik,
and at the same time, she spares no words to praise democracy in Armenia.
Interestingly, there's not a single word of praise for democracy in Azerbaijan.
Well, okay. I mean, she praises democracy, but even here I have issues with him. Because there is no democracy in Armenia. It hasn't consolidated. And even the most basic principles of the republic are being violated daily. And she says, oh, we are helping with the reform of the police. Yeah? That's why the police can beat an attorney in the police station? Who has measured the efficiency of your help to the Armenian police? Oh, we're helping with the judicial reform. Oh, really? That's why the Supreme Council, Judicial Council, can fire judges if they don't like the rulings they make? Really?
Yeah. And these are events happening right now in the past week.
So is it really about democracy when we have essentially one-party rule? Of course not. Of course not. Oh, they can say there is opposition, by the way, in the parliament. But have you seen any law that has been accepted by both opposition and the ruling party? No. 63 people they have in the parliament, and they vote, and they can really adopt any law they want. On opposition
and reject any law.
Right. And opposition can only talk. Is that real opposition? So they control the executive branch, they control the legislative branch, and they control the judicial. Right. Is that a republic? Of course not. Of course not. Last I read Montesquieu, it is not. It is not. And it would not be a republic for Benjamin Franklin either. Wouldn't be. So yes, paradoxical, isn't it? And my very quick answer to that is she's saying that because she wants Pashinyan to succeed on the foreign policy track. Why does she want him to succeed there? Because he's doing what they want him to do. The other logical question is, why do they want him to do that? What's in it for America? After all, the United States And on this day, it's important to reread the Declaration of Independence, the first paragraph. It states clearly that when there is time to separate, they should separate. It's the most pro-independence, it's the most self-determination and therefore democratic expression of human spirit.
Right. Yep.
What does she say? She says, no, they have to stay in this autocratic state. I don't think the founding fathers would have understood her. I don't think it would be acceptable, right, for someone to come and tell them that no, you have to stick with Britain. Monarchy is good for you.
I'm glad we're recording this on July 4th and hope that some non-Armenian American citizens will also hear us.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it for them. I'm just saying what I think at the moment, okay? I'm not trying to influence anyone one way or the other. I'm just saying I'm observing. These are my observations and my reflections of what I can see. And things that I hear and things that they do not make sense of to me.
So the other topic, Arthur, was border demarcations. And apparently Armenia is simply not just okay with using the 1975 Soviet maps as the basis for border demarcations. They actually want directly to use, and I think have said that they would be happy to just sort of sort of delineate the entire border based exactly on those maps, and maybe demarcate this way or another way for whatever reason. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan has so far rejected this. Even the 1975 maps are completely pro-Azerbaijani. All the so-called enclaves are depicted in Azerbaijan, but Azerbaijan is rejecting this, saying that with other countries, Azerbaijan has delimited its borders based on the analysis and examination of legally binding documents rather than any specially chosen maps. What does this mean? What does Azerbaijan want? Is it basically trying to lock in the current line of contact? I fear that it's actually more. Especially the Azerbaijani media are talking about the Treaty of Gyumri. So, what are your thoughts in terms of what the Azerbaijanis are after here?
Azerbaijan declared its independence, skipping over the Soviet period all the way back to the First Republic, 1918. Right. So, in legal terms, right, if you were to take that Declaration of Independence and then talk about the 75 borders in the Soviet period that they consider void, or, well, other countries at least saying they were occupied, like Georgians or the Balts, right? They're not saying they were occupied, but they don't recognize the Soviet period because they're saying that they continue where the First Republic ended. So back to 1920. When Aliyev and his international scholars are saying that they want legally binding documents, for them, legally binding document would be, for instance, Alexandropol Agreement, right? That I mean, here I'm just saying their logic. I'm not saying it's right. Yeah. I'm saying you're asking me what they think. I'm saying what they think. Okay. The First Republic of Armenia had the Alexandropol Agreement with Turkey, and it was diminished to 9,000 square kilometers, right? And then came Bolsheviks, and they discarded that agreement. They went into a new series of agreements, which are, again, not in Armenia's interest, but they did go into those agreements, and they redesigned, and Armenia became what more or less was known as the Soviet in the Soviet period. Although from that territory, some parts were again in the history given to Azerbaijan. So that's what they think. They think the only legally binding document is the Alexandropol Agreement, but it doesn't mean that they're right in saying that. Unfortunately for us, they are more successful in persuading Pashinyan than any of us. because then Pashinyan can come up and say, oh, we don't have this paper from...
Deed. The deed to the house.
Yes, the deed. We don't have the deed. They can even... Well, the only deed we have is this, 9,000 square kilometers. They can even take that from us. I mean, I don't know if this is a leader of a nation speaking. To my amazement, I mean, not that it's tolerated, people don't like what they hear. You could see him venturing on a family visit of Ayvazovsky's exhibition, the National Gallery, and then taking a bus. And it's not the same situation for him. Pashinyan in the streets, there were crowds running after him in 2018, wanting a picture, a selfie with him and whatnot. Very cold. And he said, look how nicely cold it's in this bus, meaning the temperature. And yes, it was nicely cold. It was very nicely cold. People were aloof to his presence. But that said, I mean, he is the man who is advancing that agenda, right? We are in an intractable conflict. I mean, if you were to take, again, theory, I mean, take Bill Zutman, others, an intractable conflict. When we have an intractable conflict, when the sides are positioned in some values or religious systems that doesn't allow them to really accept any changes, like Orthodox Jews saying that the land was given to them by God. I mean, how can I give this land to anyone? I'm just giving an example. There can be others. Or Palestinians, why not? Al-Aqsa Mosque is sacred for us. Muhammad ascended from here. How can we ask for less?
We have to see the grant deed.
Yes. I mean, we are in the same conflict with Turkey, right? Intractable as long as one of the sides or both sides do not change their narratives about what happened, who they are, their identity issues, essentially. And Pashinyan is saying, I'm ready to do that. Turkey, I'm ready to do that. We'll change that. We'll change our narratives about the genocide. We don't even want to have Ararat anymore on our symbols. That's wrong. And all these names that we are using around our cities, like Sassoon, Mush, it's on your territory. We don't want any of that. That's wrong. We need new education system that will brainwash our kids to remember that very differently. As a tragic page that is turned. Okay, we're moving forward to the bright future. He's saying that. Now, of course, I mean, for many Americans, that's an acceptable, not only acceptable, that's a very welcome position of an Armenian leader.
Well, it fits their interests, their vision of their foreign policy.
Their vision for the region, right. Because American strategies, even in the 90s, they were talking about this very openly. I mean, it's not like, I mean, it's a secret. Right. They were talking about Armenia's almost total dependence on Russia when it comes to security dilemma. And what's the major challenge security-wise to Armenia? It's the relations with Turkey and relations, therefore, with Azerbaijan, which is essentially long-term one. Same thing. So if Armenia manages to mend fences with Turkey, resolve the problem of Karabakh, it doesn't matter how, but say it's resolved and it's acceptable for Azerbaijan. And for Azerbaijan, the only acceptable option would be absorbing it into and making it its part. Even that would be acceptable for Americans. Do whatever it takes. Then it will be your era of peace and prosperity. Because the territory that will be recognized by them all, 29,800, that will be area that no one is going to touch. And you can prosper on that territory. That's lunacy, because you would need to make a very strong presence to guarantee that kind of thing. Even if you make a strong presence, there is also a question how long you're going to be present there. Not even Russians are forever there, or whoever. I mean, it's not like, I mean, you can have a power that say, this is forever. For 1,000 years, we're going to be here providing you the security. That's not happening that way. But what does it mean? It means that we have to rethink how we think about the security and be more in charge of our own security. Of course, Pashinyan and his party members often poison this discourse by these provocative questions, as they think. What? Do you want this enmity and hostility with Turkey to continue? You want to fight with 100 million Turks? How long we can sustain that? Well, I'll take these provocative questions. Not that I want eternal war with them or eternal hostility, but I don't want my identity to be changed just to be acceptable for them. They have to come to terms with my identity. And
an existence, at the least.
Right. And genocide is a good part of my identity. So therefore, I need to work with anybody who respects that and who can align with that position to support me in that. But instead, they have dropped everything. Every ball they had, they've dropped, and they're running into, the crocodile has its mouth open, wide open, and they're running into that as if it's some circus show, right? I mean, oh, we can do it. We can put our heads in crocodile's mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. Arthur, there were no statements or comments made about the third and fourth items that I mentioned earlier, unblocking and guarantees. So it appears that negotiations in DC sort of petered out on the first two. Pashinyan's government has claimed that one of their main achievements is in returning Karabakh to the negotiating table. Not only do we not see Stepanakert around the table anywhere, but Yerevan has roundly ignored Stepanakert's calls to stop negotiations when there's all this violence. Right. Couple of questions. First of all, what do you expect to see as an outcome from these DC negotiations? They were together for 3 days talking about it. Do you see any possibility? The second one is more about Stepanakert's options. Do you see any possibility for Stepanakert's calls for the OSCE-MG to come together and provide a platform for Baku-Stepanakert dialogue?
No, OSCE-MG is right now out of question. I mean, Russia, France is not acceptable for Azerbaijan. They've made open statement about that.
Right.
Russia and the United States cannot see eye to eye, so that's also out of question. So that that group exists still on paper, but in reality, it's not operational. It cannot really create that kind of a platform. But a more important issue here is, yes, Yerevan insists that Artsakh, you now go and negotiate with Alen Simonyan says that. Pashinyan says, oh, now you go and negotiate with Baku. But what does Baku say? Baku says, you negotiate on my terms, on my agenda. And issue number one on my agenda is how to make this, what you call Nagorno-Karabakh Republic Artsakh non-existent. Before I even talk to you, disband your, what you call, armed forces. Disband armed forces, then you come and talk about how we're going to reintegrate you.
Assimilate you.
Is that the negotiation that Pashinyan and Alen Simonyan foresee? Or they think that Aliyev is going to come to talk about how they're going to resume the supply of natural gas, electricity, open the roads, just because they care, they have humanitarian concerns? Of course not. So what are they saying? They should be really, I mean, they are manipulating this issue as if Artsakh representatives could go and openly negotiate any issue they want. No.
Right.
They are pushing them to go and negotiate reintegration in Azerbaijan. That's what they're saying. And we should call spade a spade when we see it. I mean, they're saying go and negotiate your reintegration, because there's no other negotiation possible with Baku now. Baku would not sit down and talk to them. And moreover, Baku says, I'm going to tell who is going to be your representatives, who I'm going to be talking to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when they say reintegration or integration, I hear dissolve and assimilate, basically.
Well, assimilate, I mean, they're not using that term yet, but that's essentially what Aliyev has gone public. I mean, and by the way, in 1920, in November, in one of my interviews, I said that this is going to be happening, because if you are saying A, it's only logical to expect that you will sing the rest of the alphabet in that order, right?
Yeah.
If you are saying that this is Azeri territory, Aliyev says, okay, this is my territory. You cannot issue passports for my territory. I mean, these people live on this territory. You issuing passports for them? No way.
What's your money doing here?
You cannot issue a driver's license or any document for that matter. You cannot send your drums to be in circulation here. This is my territory. And the list is long, right? I mean, once you recognize the sovereignty over their territory, all the claims of Aliyev become legitimized by you. You've just legitimized all the claims he's going to be making. And of course, armed forces. What armed forces on my territory? These are illegal formations. I don't recognize them. This is my territory. I don't have any armed forces other than the ones I control. And so forth. I mean, he himself has opened this box. It's not Pandora's box, but the box where all these nasty snakes of Aliyev propaganda have lived closed for 30 years. He has legitimized them. He talks about UN Security Council resolutions. And at times, I think that neither he nor members of his team have really read these resolutions.
No, right.
And he interprets them exactly the way the Azeri propaganda has been interpreting them all along. It means that, as I said, they are more successful in persuading him than any of us could be. He accepts whatever arguments are made by the Azeri side of the table. Hook, line, and sink, whatever they give, he takes.
Vartan Oskanian, in his interview today, said that if you see Artsakh negotiating with Azerbaijan, then that means it's the end. Like, then that means they have accepted all the preconditions, and we know what Azerbaijan's preconditions are. But I do want to ask, if Artsakh is left to its own devices, what choices does it have? I mean, obviously, Azerbaijan is actually going as far as strangling people, exposing them to famine, no gas, no electricity. What is the leadership of Artsakh to do in the case when Armenia itself seems to be the #1 partner for Azerbaijan in trying to enforce this blockade on people? I don't know. I don't know about any other way to qualify this other than that.
Well, it's very easy to sit in a faraway land, a land of plenty still, the United States, and from here kind of give advice. I mean, you should be doing this, continue with your struggle, right? You are strong, continue with your struggle. And I think it's cynical doing it even from Yerevan. I'm certainly not the one who's going to be telling Artsakh people what is right, what is wrong to do. I mean, I'm not entitled to any moral statements here. The issue is even further complicated, because after 30 years of all sorts of deprivations, losses, wars, you name it, people have come to a point, if before they at least had some future, that a vision that they could live with. right? It's not probably ideal, but they could see some vision. Right now, they're demotivated entirely by the position taken by Armenia in the first place. And, specialists in muscle pain, right? Athletes who do, I don't know, cycling races, long races, I don't know, or running long distances. And they're studying what's happening to a human. Is it his physiology that he inherited that allows him to overcome that pain and continue? And in most cases, it's not the physique that they inherited from their parents. It's not the structure of their bones or the tissues or the muscle itself. It's the motivation. It's here. It's here. If they have motivation, they continue to run, to cycle, and take all sorts of things that from outside looks like impossible to endure, that kind of stress. So without motivation, without a vision, it's going to be very difficult for them to sustain this for a long time, as you said. So that's why it's either we stop and change, and I don't know if Vartan Oskanian's 3 months or whatever it takes, but we do change from the track that we are, or the path that Armenian foreign policymakers have taken now. Or I don't know. I mean, I don't have a strong answer here. The only thing that might be, and that's theoretical, right? Because Russia would not want to lose that asset entirely, right? And just out of their own interests, they may do something. But I would not put my bets on that either, right? If we ourselves are not ready to take action or do something, why should we be expecting others to do it? If they do it, definitely will be doing it out of their own interest. And I'm not sure how it's going to evolve, what's going to happen in Ukraine. Will they be able even to protect their interests beyond Artsakh, let's say their base in Armenia and whatnot? Because there are all sorts of outcomes that are possible. It's uncertain. Anyone who's telling me that they know the outcome one way or the other is just doing wishful thinking.
Okay.
It's uncertain.
I'm going to wrap up for a second. All right. Let's wrap up our topics here. Thank you for that, Arthur. So there are two things on my mind right now before we close. First of all, I'd like to remind everyone that if you're a citizen of Armenia and eligible to vote, please go and sign a citizens initiative that was started a couple of weeks ago. It's called Hayaqve. We are including the links for this and all information links in our show notes. Hovik, do you have any comments about Hayaqve that you would like to pass on?
No, other than all my close friends and family have already signed it, and I would just join that call. If we accept the rules of democracy, if we accept the rules that the Armenian people are the makers of their own destiny, then at least we should start with this. And so ask your neighbors, ask your friends, family, relatives, if they have signed. For instance, I'm making a spreadsheet and of everyone I know, and that's the least I can do. I mean, look at people in Artsakh; they're going through unimaginable hardships for the rest of the Armenian nation. And if you can't pick yourself up and go to just sort of symbolically even sign something, then what hope do we have other than sort of complain about it on social media?
Yeah. Hayaqve.am. Okay, the second thing before we close, I'd like to ask each of you if there's something on your mind this past week that you would like to talk about. Arthur, would you like to share a thought that's been on your mind?
Well, I mean, if you're asking about things that are not related to the topics that we discussed, I mean, it was an interesting news from Ukraine-Georgia relations, because Ukrainian President Zelensky demanded that the Georgian authorities release Mikhail Saakashvili and send him back to Ukraine, which the Georgian government and authorities interpreted as an assault, as an offensive behavior from Ukraine. This is interesting because what's in it for Ukraine? Why Ukraine would care now so much about its citizen Saakashvili? They didn't show any care before. Why are they so much interested in him right now? And is it them that really who's interested in saving Saakashvili? Or another player is asking them to do this. So they're doing the other players' bidding here. But for me, the most surprising part was I could see some strains when Georgia opened the visas and with Russia normalized that. They came under pressure from the U.S. and Ukrainians have put the Georgian, I think it's the largest air company, Georgian Air, on their blacklist, right? Sanctioned it. I certainly, I mean, if I'm looking back to the very beginning of the war and conflict, I would not think that the relations between Ukraine and Georgia could sour to the level they have, right? And this also is a reminder to all of us that states right now in this world disorder, care more about their interests. And if they had alliances where, at least on the value or other interests, were working and coalitions they had formed, if those are now working against their prioritized interests, they are ready to go with what's at the top of their list, their vital interests. And interests are about, again, interpretation. Right now, the Georgian government, elected Georgian government, that's how they interpret their national interests. And despite the pressure from the US and all others, and despite so many areas where they depend now on, NATO and EU, they have firmly taken the stance that it's not in their interests. And I'm not saying that we need to applaud that kind of behavior, but I'm saying that there is something to learn about what your neighbors are doing in advancing and protecting their national interests.
Thank you. Hovik, something on your mind that you would like to share today?
So I'll preface this by saying that I'm not a lawyer, but I've been following another interesting, in quotes, initiative by this regime, which is this issue of active remorse. For those who don't know what it is, it's a legal principle that Armenia inherited from Soviet times, where for light and medium crimes, if you show remorse, if you reimburse for any damages or loss you may have caused, then the prosecutor may decide at his own sole discretion to not take your crime to the indictment stage and essentially let you go free. Well, the geniuses at Civil Contract have decided to introduce this concept of active remorse for even severe crimes. Think about rape, think about murder, think about treason, or think about desertion from the army. That last one is very deliberate because, according to Ruben Melikian, he fears that this is being done in order to justify Pashinyan's claims that there were 10,000, deserters during the war. And how? Because apparently they have opened 10,000 investigations into cases of desertion or alleged desertion, but they're just drowning in casework, and none of it is really probably prosecutable anyway. It would take a lot. According to my understanding of what lawyers are saying, it's it's useless to prosecute, but they hope to introduce this law, and then all those 10,000 cases, they will say, we will stop prosecuting you if you admit you were guilty, if you, I don't know, show some symbolic remorse and, remunerate your losses or whatever, So it's an interesting thing to follow, and it's basically solely being done to make Pashinyan and his wife sound correct when they said there are 10,000 deserters. But those deserters, according to the government, may have been people who are not even in the country. They got a notice to appear or to be drafted, and they were not here, or thousands of many other circumstances. Many people who fought in the war would object to that characterization that there have been so many desertions. But Pashinyan wants to prove his word, and the dangerous side of this is that you're giving the prosecutor more leeway, and they're able to, even for very serious crimes, solely in their own discretion, decide what to do with the fate of that accused. I mean, we don't have to pretend that corruption is anywhere gone. In fact, some say it's even more today. So it's going to be an interesting fodder for increasing corruption, I think.
All right. We're going to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us, Arthur. Much appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you, Arthur.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Happy 4th of July. Bye.
Bye, everyone. All right, that's our show. We hope you found our weekend review helpful. We invite your feedback and your suggestions. You can find us on most social media and podcast platforms. The links are in our show notes. Talk to you next week.